welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another bookmas video. I have been loving doing these bookmas videos, okay? It's literally been so much fun. So in today's video, I'm going to give you guys recommendations based on specific tropes. I read a lot of books, so I feel like I can give you guys good recommendations on these tropes. It's not just like, hey, these are the only 3 books that I've read that have this trope. It's like, no. No, by the way guys, I'm a heavy reader, so these are like my top books that fall under those tropes. So without further ado, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe before we get right on into the video, and I promise, it will not disappoint, okay? Okay, let's go ahead and get this video started. The first trope I picked out is enemies to lovers. This one I love so much, okay? I read like a lot of enemies to lovers books, but I feel like that trope is low-key overused. Like, not to get too into detail about like why I don't love that trope as much, but I feel like that trope should only be reserved for fantasy books. I feel like there's no reason why a little sappy rom-com should be like enemies to lovers. It's like, no, you guys don't absolutely hate each other like to the level that you would if you guys were in a fantasy world. So for this category, I'm only going to give you guys fantasy books because I feel like romance books don't fall under that category for me. I don't know why. The first one I want to talk about is none other than Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I read this book, I think like 2 years ago around Christmas time, so I feel like it's very nostalgic to be talking about this book again. I will never pass up a chance to talk about this book. Is this book and then also the second book. Literally, this is one of my favorite series of all time, and it's only a duology. Like, I literally hope and pray every single day that maybe, just maybe, we'll get a third book and we'll get some more crumbs of these people. Basically, these books are following our 2 main characters, Cassie and Jace. Jace is basically the prince of a kingdom. Like, he's spent his entire life like with wealth, and Cassie is just kind of like a street thief, and she's been that her whole life, but she recently gets hired to be like the queen's guard, but not for the same kingdom as Jace's kingdom. Basically, she's sent to go like spy on Jace, get into his good graces so that she can basically unravel his entire world. It's more of a character-led story instead of like a world-building type of fantasy, but I loved it so very much. So easy to follow. This was one of the first fantasy books I've ever read, and I love it so much. So if there was one book where I was like, oh, enemies to lovers, I immediately think of this. Dance of Thieves I read like 2 years ago, so a lot of the information I kind of forgot about, but with these 2 next books I'm about to talk about for the enemies to lovers category, guys, I read these so recently and I love both of them, okay? First up, and honestly the only book that I've been thinking about since I read it, The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This book I genuinely feel like falls under the enemies to lovers category. You have our main character, Selena. She basically works in this Assassin's Guild. She's kind of just trying to get out of it though. Like, she doesn't want to be in the Assassin's Guild anymore. She kind of got roped into it when she was young, and she realizes like she doesn't want to do it anymore. And I feel like while the romance in this book does take a little bit of a back seat at times, I love this book literally with all of my heart. But the reason it falls into the enemies to lovers category is because there is a little bit of romance in this book sprinkled in here, okay? And this is the reason why I added it into this category. Not only because I wanted to talk about the book, okay? It's also because there is a little romance sparking between her and one of the other people in the Assassin's Guild. I'm not going to tell you who. I'm not going to tell you what happens. I just don't want to go into too much detail with you guys because I feel like this is one of those books I just want you to go into it blind. Like, that is all I want. Emotions will be brought up, okay? The last book that I picked for enemies to lovers is none other than Heartless Hunter. I feel like this book was heavily talked about on Book Talk for like maybe a whole month straight, and then it kind of died out like really fast and nobody talks about this book anymore, but I'm here to talk about it, okay? Because if there's one thing that I'm gonna do, it's gonna be holding on to something forever. Basically, the reason that I picked this for enemies to lovers is just simply because Gideon is a witch hunter and Rune is a witch. Like, they are just made out to be enemies. I think there's something really special in this book about their communication skills, and I did want to point that out really quickly before we move on into like any of the other things that occur in this book, because normally in enemies to lovers books, when characters communicate, they're communicating in a way that's like, I guess like degrading to the other person, and just like, obviously they're not friends, like they're enemies, like obviously they're going to be like kind of rude. I don't know how else to explain it, just like rude to each other. But in this book I feel like they didn't do that at all. A lot of the times when they would have conversations, they would have differing opinions, it would be like in a respectful way of asking each other like why they think that way or like how they feel. It was just done in such a simple way though that it wasn't like anything overpowering of you would genuinely think about these characters' communication skills. It's just like, this is something that the book had and I loved so much, and I feel like that's why it differed a little bit from a lot of the enemies to lovers books that I read. I feel like while this isn't like my favorite book of all time by any means, or like my favorite fantasy book at all, it's just one of those books that differed a little bit from other enemies to lovers books that I read, so I felt like it's only right to be added in on this video. Okay everyone, next up is my favorite trope to talk about, okay, because it's childhood friends to lovers. If you guys know me, okay, I'm a simple girl. Alright, all that I need is a simple little cute rom-com. Like, I don't even need it to be like crazy things happening. I just need it to be simple and cozy. And I feel like childhood friends to lovers is the perfect trope for like a simple, cozy read. Like, it really does not take much brain power. You don't even need to convince me that these characters like each other, because it's just like, hey, like, they've been friends for so long. And then you get to the end of the books and the love confessions are literally always top tier in childhood friends to lovers books, because it's like, these people actually know each other. Like, you literally never run the risk of it ever being insta-lovey when you're reading a childhood friends to lovers book, so I love them so much, okay? Let's talk about my favorite childhood friends to lovers books. I think you guys all know where we're starting, okay? When anyone thinks childhood friends to lovers books and you've been on Book Talk or BookTube for literally even a day, Love Another Word. That's the book that you would think about, and that's the first book I'm going to be talking about, okay? Because I feel like rightfully so. I love this book. I love Macy. I love Elliot. Basically, you're following these two childhood friends. They basically grew up in these cabins where like their backyards would like connect with each other, and Elliot almost every single day would go over to Macy's house and they would sit in her closet and read books and talk about books together. Like, if you want a book where the characters love books equally as much as you, this is the book for you. How else do I say this? I just love these characters so much with all of my heart. I feel like these authors literally put everything into writing Macy and Elliot. There's just something so simplistic and easy and pure-hearted about Macy and Elliot that I love to death. I would actually die for Macy and Elliot, and that's not an over-exaggeration. Okay, I know I can be dramatic at sometimes, but I would die for these characters, so. I feel like also, if I haven't yet convinced you to read this book, just look at the cuteness on this cover. Does it not look like the cutest, coziest little read of all time? I mean, there's no more words to say. The next childhood friends to lovers book is none other than Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I'm actually still into this book right now. I'm still currently reading it, but I will be done with this book by the time this video comes out, so I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a 5 stars. Ah! Like, guys, like, I can't with these characters. I love them to pieces. Okay, take a breath, Bryn. For this book, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, okay? I don't think it completely falls under childhood friends to lovers, just simply because it is a brother's best friend type of situation, but hear me out, okay? These characters have grown up together. It's also like Ford was still best friends with Rosie growing up, just like was more so friends with Rosie's brother instead of just Rosie. Do you guys know what I'm saying here? It's still childhood friends to lovers. I don't care. Argue with the wall. The wall's waiting for you to argue with it. I'm not arguing with y'all. I stand by what I said. This book I feel like is just the cutest, sweetest vibes ever. Normally, I don't love small town romances, okay? We'll get more on that later. But I feel like this small town specifically isn't like the same energy as like a country small town, like one that I live in. This is like a mountain town, so I love the vibes, okay? I'm totally here for it. I feel like what's special about this childhood friends to lovers is that it also kind of falls under the category of enemies to lovers. These characters grew up together and they were always kind of like bickering back and forth and stuff like that, but in a fun way. And also I feel like this should be said, the other trope in this book is that Ford is a dad, so it's like single parent trope also, and I normally, oh my god, I could go for years and years and years talking about this. I normally hate kids in books. They absolutely drive me insane. I feel like authors don't know how to write realistic kids. But I say all that to say Cora, who is Ford's kid in this book, she's not unlikable at all. Like, she's very easily likable. She takes kind of a back seat in the romance. Like, it's not like this kid has to do with the entire story. It's like Ford is still his own person at the end of the day, and I think that is what I also really like about this book. I feel like a lot of the times in like a parent tropey book, it's like, why does the whole parent's life revolve around just the kid? Like, I don't care. I don't care. Make the kid shut up. Like, that's how I feel sometimes. But this book, I feel like, did it in such an easy, simple way. I love this book. I love the romance between these characters. I feel like it's gonna be a 5-star read. Like, it's shaping up to be that way. I don't have much left, so I'll let y'all know what I actually think about this book when I finish it in one of my, like, later on videos. But for right now, love, 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 love this book. Love this trope. Okay. The last book for this trope is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This book, again, I feel like it's not really childhood friends to lovers. But these characters did grow up together, so I don't even want to hear it. I don't even need to hear it. This book, yes, is not technically childhood friends to lovers, but it is kind of the similar trope of wild love. Basically, our main characters are Allie and Ethan is the brother of Allie's best friend. But yes, while this does fall under like the brother's best friend trope, which I actually kind of hate that trope, while this does fall under that trope, I feel like it's more so like they all grew up together. You know, like it's not like, okay, it is a childhood friends to lovers. Like, I'll sit and plead my case forever and ever and ever because I want to talk about this book like it's my last dying breath. Okay? I feel like kind of the romance takes a back seat in this book. And Allie's experiencing a lot of change in her life, okay? She has 2 kids. She's recently divorced, like going through the divorce throughout this book. I can't say who it is. I can't say who it is, but there's heavy grief in this book too, okay? That's all I need to say. I loved every bit of this book. I feel like Allie and Ethan's love was just like so simplistic. Like every time Allie would doubt herself, Ethan would come in there and be like, hey, we're not doing that. Like, in the most simple way, okay? Like, Allie deserves the world, and I feel like Ethan is that for her. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Okay, everyone, our next trope is none other than found family. This is actually, like, one of my second favorite tropes of all time. I feel like there's something so special about found family being in a book. I think it's just the drastic change from a character being, like, so independent forever and never trusting anyone to, like, then trusting all of these different people and finding their family. It's just, like, I will sob. Okay? First book I want to talk about for this trope is 5 Broken Blades. This book I read I think like a month ago now. Like it is a very fresh book on my mind. There's something so special about the characters in this book because they're all like thieves, runaways, spies. Like they all have like a harsh past. So obviously everything they've been through in their past is not going to help them trust people now. But they all kind of have to come together to take over the throne. Didn't have the greatest past and not the best upbringing or anything like that. So obviously they fell into like bad things happening to them, and obviously that made them come off as like horrible people, but they're really not. Like they're great people, and I love every single one of the characters so much. Oh my god, the end of the book actually had me shook to my core. I was so mad at the end of the book. It's also one of those things where I wasn't like mad and it didn't affect my rating, but it was like, why did it have to end that way? Like you left me on a cliffhanger. I'm so upset. Like, don't you know I immediately have to read the next book now? Like you can't be leaving me on a cliffhanger. The next book I want to talk about I feel like follows a pretty similar like plot line and found family trope, but it's none other than 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book I feel like I said, follows a very similar like found family trope vibe as 5 Broken Blades. Basically you're following a convict with a thirst for revenge, a sharpshooter who can't walk away from a wager, a runaway with a privileged past, a spy known as the Wraith, a heartrender using her magic to survive the slums, and a thief with a gift for unlikely escapes. Basically all these people get recruited to be in Kaz's crew. Now what it means to be in Kaz's crew is basically, hey, we're all coming together and we're trying to break into like the most heavily guarded prison of all time so we can break out this one person. It's so fun to read, it's so twisty, it's so revenge filled, it's so like character driven that I loved it so much. The next one for this trope that I picked was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I feel like this is like very drastic change from the last 2 that I picked for this trope. But Happy Place by Emily Henry is basically a second chance romance between these characters named Harriet and Wynne. The reason that I put this for the found family trope is just because this whole like second chance romance is taking place in this like cabin that these friends rented out. But for this book specifically, you're not only following like the second chance romance between Harriet and Wynne, it's also a deep dive of friendships. I feel you're following these characters who are just like, obviously they've been friends for a long time, but they're kind of like growing apart. Obviously drastic changes are happening in all of their lives and they're growing up at like very different paces. Also, the found family in this book is like no other that I've read in a romance book. I just think it's so special and I love it. I love it so much, okay? The next trope that I picked is Right Person, Wrong Time. The first book I picked is 7 Days in June. This book I actually DNF'd. So sorry, okay? But I feel like it fits this mold perfectly, so I had to talk about it. And I want to try to actually read this book anyway, so I wanted to talk about it here with you guys right now. Basically, this is like a childhood lovers to lovers again. I love this book so much. I didn't get that far into it, and I didn't DNF it out of like hatred of the book at all. It was just like, hey, I low-key forgot that I was reading this book. Like it was book slump central when I stopped reading this. So basically these two characters loved each other so much when they were younger, but they have obviously grown apart over the years. And it's just one of those situations where it's like, hey, I know that I'm meant to be with this person, I just don't know when we will be together. And when you see these characters come back into each other's lives, it's just so special. Like the way that it's, I don't know, just the way it's written is so perfect and very capsulating. Like you're immediately hooked into the book, and I loved it so much. So even though I DNF'd the book, I did get pretty far into it, so I thought that I should put it up for this category. This next one is so much fun, okay? People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I read this literally forever ago, but it was my first Emily Henry book that I've ever read. Changed my life. I love her writing style. I thought this book perfectly fit under this category because you're following Poppy and Alex, and they are like these college friends. They're like best friends, okay? They go on these vacations every single year, but the past few years they haven't gone, and they kind of like stopped talking to each other. It kind of like got like dry texting vibes, which we all know how that feels, okay? Let's not act like any of us are a stranger to that feeling, all right? Basically, this book is a split POV between like their last vacations to this vacation, and basically this vacation they were like, hey, we haven't gone in so long, let's just like for the heck of it go on another vacation. Even though we're not as close as we were before, and obviously something happened on the last vacation that none of us are going to talk about. I just loved it. They were so right person, wrong time, because these characters were battling with so much those past vacations. And when this wedge was driven between them all those years ago, I was genuinely, it made me fully believe right person, wrong time. But I love this book so much, and I feel like nobody really talks about this book anymore. It's always the other Emily Henry books, okay? But I'm here, and I still love this book so much, and I will talk about it with my last dying breath. Next trope that I want to give some recommendations for is small town romance. Now this one is actually, like I said before, not my favorite trope by any means, okay? It's actually by a long shot. Like, she's trying to climb the ranks, but I keep pushing her back down. No, I don't like it. And I feel like that absolutely sucks to say, and I get why people love it. Like, I'm not hating on you at all if you love that trope, okay? But I just so happen, you know, to live in a small town. It's not too great. It's not all it's cracked up to be in those romance books. I hate small town romance books that like over exaggerate the fact that being in a small town is so much fun. It's like, no. Done and dusted. Now this book specifically, I feel like I did like a lot, okay? I gave this book 4 stars. I feel like it was one of those small town... Whoa! Did you hear my country accent? That's horrible! I can't believe I just did that. Okay, my country twang just came out. Stop. Cut the cameras, guys. Okay, where were we? Done and dusted, okay? This book I felt like was one of those small town romances that didn't like fully drive the point home that small towns are everything and small towns are so fun and so cute and so dainty. Like, no, they're not. While yes, it did obviously still romanticize small town living, I feel like you're following the main character who doesn't really like totally rag on city life also. So basically our main character is a horse rider, like she does it professionally, and she ended up like moving away, and then she ends up moving back home after an accident, and then obviously like love is blossoming in the air. It's like such a cute story. I feel like the family in this book was just so realistic. The whole small town vibe was so realistic. I feel like the romance in this book also wasn't like completely overwhelming. I think a lot of the times small town... I need to stop. Why did my country twang come out again? That's so horrible. Oh my god, stop, Bryn. That's so... oh my god, I can't. I feel like in small town romance books especially, like the romance really like is overwhelming. Like there's not really much else going on, but I feel like in this book specifically there was so many other different plot lines and things that you were following that was just like interesting. Okay everyone, with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is where the video ends, okay? I hope that you guys have been enjoying the Bookmas content so far. Definitely so much more that is coming out soon, alright? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow all my socials, links are down in the description box down below. I love you so much. I will see you guys super soon, literally tomorrow. Okay? Hope you're not sick of me yet, alright? Goodbye.